Dober večer. Vojaško posredovanje v Siriji je po dramatičnem diplomatskem preobratu za nekaj časa očitno odloženo. V London smo poklicali arabskega novinarja Sakhra Al-Makhadija, ki razmere v Siriji komentira za vse svetovne medije in je do nedavnega živel v Damasku. Good evening, Mr. Makhadhi. Thank you for joining us. Now you think that military intervention wouldn't deteriorate things further. How so if the military opposition is fractured? Isn't that going to lead into a war among those groups once the common enemy, Assad's army, is out of the way, if that happens, of course?
But you're absolutely right. The armed opposition is starting to fight itself. There have already been battles between different wings, between jihadist groups like Jabhat al-Nusra and other al-Qaeda-linked groups, and between secular armed groups that align themselves with the Free Syrian Army. There have also been armed clashes between jihadist groups, between different jihadist wings, and between Kurdish groups and jihadi groups as well. So, you know, the opposition seems to be fighting itself, especially in northern regions where they're battling for resources and for control of territory. And, you know, some fighters have even used the words the coming battle. So they believe they're preparing for a future war after the fall of Assad. And really, this means that, you know, they're really taking their eyes off the ball, and they're focusing their attention away from the revolution and away from overthrowing the regime and focusing on infighting.
So what could the international community do, if anything?
There's no easy option at the moment. You know, the West is faced by the problem that it's coming after 2.5 years of inaction, 2.5 years of the Syrian people and the armed opposition and the political opposition calling for Western action of many different kinds over the last 2.5 years, to be faced by deadlock on the Security Council, with America and Britain and France hiding behind the Russian and Chinese veto on the Security Council and refusing to take any action. Track of the political movement has stalled and has struggled to raise funds from countries that should be willing to help the Syrian peoples. Some Syrians are calling for broader scale military intervention to overthrow the regime. I'm not sure that would solve the problems in the short term. I think now what Syria is faced with is a long-term civil war, a battle that's going to continue and continue with no side claiming victory in the near future. And really all the West can do is what it's been doing for the last 2.5 years, which is watch from the sidelines as it loses control of the situation.
But what about peace conference, like some diplomats are suggesting?
A peace conference would have been a great idea 1.5 years ago or 2 years ago. The time for that has passed now, unfortunately, and the Syrian regime has shown no sincerity in talking to the opposition. It doesn't even recognize that there is an opposition to be talked to. And similarly, on the opposition side, I think the only kind of international peace conference that would have any impact on Syria now is a peace conference that involves countries like Russia and Iran and France and Saudi and Qatar and the UK and the US. By getting those international partners together and by bringing them together, because these are the countries, the protagonists in the civil war, these are the countries that are feeding both sides. They're feeding the regime and feeding opposition fighters and supporting the political opposition.
Is it likely to happen?
In the near term, it's unlikely to happen, but after many, many more years of civil war, I think that will be the only possible solution to this war.
Mr. Makhadhi, thank you for making things clearer.